Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Dockum, and today I'm going to give you an overview of NASA's Technical and Business Assistance Program. Goals of this presentation is to provide information on NASA's implementation of TABA, both Phase 1 and Phase 2 in the 2021 NASA SBIR STTR solicitation. Going to provide you with some information and some guidance on how you can request TABA as you start looking through the solicitation and the information that will be provided. We're also going to describe how small businesses can use the TABA opportunity to navigate future funding opportunities found within the NASA SBIR and STTR programs, including strengthening your proposals for Phase 2 submissions and also understanding your commercialization goals as you move forward. And that will enable you to shape and mature your ability to commercialize your innovation, whether you're going after a NASA market or a non-NASA commercial market. What is Technical and Business Assistance, or TABA? This was enacted by Congress in August of 2018 under the John McCain National Defense Authorization Act for FY19. And the act basically has the following things in it. First of all, the agencies were given a choice. They could contract or did not have to contract with a preferred vendor or multiple vendors to provide TABA services. Small businesses now have the opportunity to select their own TABA vendors to utilize, or they could utilize a service an agency has secured for TABA vendors as well. So that's if an agency actually put on contract someone to provide TABA services on your behalf. Either way, small businesses right now have a choice and they're able to select their own vendor if they choose to do that. Eligible services included within the statute are product sales, IP protections, market research, market validation, and development of regulatory plans and manufacturing plans. These are pretty important because they all have a commercialization type of activity associated with them, and that was Congress's goal, was to try to get innovations moved out of the SBIR program and into commercial markets or federal commercial markets. They also stipulated within the act how much money TABA could be provided for each Phase 1 and Phase 2 awards. So under Phase 1, firms can request up to $6,500 per year, and that has to be paid directly to a TABA vendor who's providing the service. And then also Phase 2 awardees can also request in their proposals, and if they receive an award, can get up to $50,000 per project to also be paid to TABA vendors to provide TABA services. As additional part of the statute requested that the agencies consider how they were going to provide the funding and whether it would be part of the award or would they issue it over and above the recipient's award. One thing to note here is that as far as the funding goes, all these funds have to be provided to a third-party vendor. You cannot keep these funds within your firm. So you would have to pay them to somebody outside of your firm in order to conduct these TABA services. The last thing is agencies are required to report to Congress on how TABA is being utilized within their programs. So if you do plan to request TABA, you'll have to report back to the agency on how you're using it, because the agency will then turn that information around and report back to Congress on how TABA is being implemented. So kind of go through here, next set of slides on how Phase 1, if you're applying for Phase 1 funding, how you might want to use TABA to help support your project. And history suggests that at Phase 1, most small businesses are hyper-focused on research and development due to the short period of performance. NASA has a short period of performance of only 6 months for your firm to develop that feasibility study or that proof of concept. Therefore, you're going to be pretty busy trying to make sure that that research is done so that you've got the data to submit a Phase 2 proposal. So what's cool about TABA is that it can actually provide an opportunity for you to stay focused on that research and development while utilizing vendors to help shape your commercialization roadmap as you move forward. And that roadmap is going to be done to do a couple of things. Number one, it should strengthen your ability to apply for a future Phase 2, and I'm going to go into what that means in a second. Also, it'll also allow you to kind of be thinking about what are other opportunities besides just a phase two that I might want to go after at NASA. So we have phase 2E, we have sequentials, we also have phase three opportunities at NASA. So you want to be thinking about those are all of those type of opportunities, and that's what a vendor could help you do. The other thing it also will do is put in place strategies for you to move beyond the SBIR program, which is the intent of this. It's to commercialize the technology or the innovation and make sure you move it into non-federal and potentially federal markets. So how would this work for phase one? So if you're looking to receive TABA at phase one and you want to request that 6,500, there's a few things you're going to have to do in your phase one proposal. First of all, we want to make sure everyone understands that this is not a requirement. You do not have to request TABA, and we will not be considering TABA as part of the technical evaluation. So when your proposal is submitted, it will go through the technical review process as it currently does. TABA will not feed into that. There's no scoring, nothing is going to happen there. The only time TABA will be looked at is when our source selection official makes a final selection. That's when we'll actually look at TABA requests, and then we'll do a formal evaluation to determine if the vendors you've selected are qualified and can be used. So what we'll do is in the solicitation, you're going to see that we'll have a description of how you're going to request TABA. You're going to provide us with how the funding will be used. And then additionally, we'll provide that 6,500 as a supplement to your phase one award if you get selected. We're asking the firms to choose their own TABA vendors. As I mentioned earlier, agencies can have their own preferred vendor or not, and NASA is choosing not to. So we're asking the firms to let us know, who do you guys want to work with? What TABA vendors do you think make sense to help you support the information that you're looking to get? And so when we review those TABA requests, we reserve the right to withhold funds and or deny the funding based on the vendors that are being provided until we have a formal review and we can actually validate that these are actual vendors that can perform the work that you're asking to be done. Once those are approved, then that'll become a supplement to your award. Within your proposal, within the solicitation, you're going to see that we're encouraging phase one applicants to do two things. Because there's not a lot of money, it's only $6,500. We really would like to see firms focus on these two things, which is number one, development of a phase two TABA needs assessment. When you submit a phase two proposal to NASA, and if you request TABA at phase two, you're going to need to tell us exactly how those funds will be used. What are the vendors you're going to be needing, and what is the goals of receiving those services? How are you going to move that technology forward into be commercialized? That's what the TABA needs assessment is all about. It's going to exactly lay out all those plans. The second thing we're asking you to also provide and use these funds for is to help develop your phase two commercialization and business plan. Now, the phase two commercialization and business plan has always been part of the NASA proposal, and it's been like that for years. However, we're noticing a lot of NASA firms aren't paying much attention to this, and we're actually strengthening this part of the SEC proposal, and we'll be reviewing it a little bit more critically. So we're asking you to start really thinking about what is the commercialization and business plan things that we're requiring at phase two, and how can you get the information in place using a TABA vendor to help strengthen that particular part of the proposal. This is done so we can evaluate the firm's ability to commercialize the innovation and to provide a level of confidence regarding the firm's future and financial viability. And this is something that is scored and can lead to is part of the review process and could potentially lead to a firm being selected for an award. So now you're at phase two, you're getting ready to submit, and you're going to request TABA at phase two, which I indicated earlier is up to $50,000. Again, it's not required. You do not have to submit for TABA at phase two if you choose not to. If you do choose to, we will not consider any TABA requests as part of the technical and the commercialization and business planning plan reviews. TABA will be reviewed after a selection has been made, and it's only to validate that the vendors are qualified and can provide the services that you're requesting. What you're going to find is when you submit the phase two proposal, there's going to be information in the solicitation that's going to say that you are required to submit a phase two TABA needs assessment with, and we have specific requirements that are laid out in the solicitation to complete that. That's the reason why we're asking you to deal with this at phase one. Get somebody to help you develop that so you exactly know what makes sense for your technology and your innovation as you move forward to phase two. And then again, the funding for phase two TABA will be a supplement. It'll be over and above the award that you receive. We're also doing the same thing at phase two. We want you to choose your own TABA vendors. And again, as I mentioned, we'll review those vendors after selections for phase two have been made. And then we'll notify you if they've been approved or not approved. And you'll get directions on how to get reimbursed for the services that are provided to you by those vendors. The commercialization and business plan, again, that we asked you to start working on that upfront in your phase one, because as you submit it for your phase two, this is going to be a part of your proposal that has been there for years. But what we are seeing is that a lot of our phase two firms are not paying much attention to this particular piece of the proposal. We, again, are strengthening this, and we're going to be providing a lot of new requirements here. One being that there's going to be a page length requirement. You will now be required to provide us with information instead of just a couple paragraphs, which we have seen some firms do. So it'll be a required part of the phase two proposal. Again, it's been part of the policies for years. This is formally reviewed at the same time as the technical evaluation and contributes to the overall recommendation for selection of phase two awards. We are seeing within the program that poorly written commercialization and business plans are impacting the ability for some projects to be funded. For more information on how NASA reviews commercialization and business plans, we'd like you to see another presentation within the IOC resource section here, and it is called "Why is the Commercialization and Business Plan So Important?" So with that, there's typically a bunch of questions that always come up from applicants regarding TABA, and so I wanted to kind of go through some of the 10 most frequently asked questions that we get. The first one is, what can TABA be used for in phase one? And again, we're encouraging firms that due to limited funding, we would like to see you help better position yourself for future funding opportunities, including that phase two submission. So we're going to be encouraging you to use that money for the commercialization and business plan and a TABA needs assessment. What can TABA funds be used for at phase two? So TABA activities should meet commercialization goals for the innovation. So Congress identified these activities as product sales, IP protections, market research, market validation, development of regulatory plans, and manufacturing plans. So these are all things that fall within that commercialization realm, and you can take a look at using TABA funds for those. Do I have to request TABA? What if I decide not to request TABA? Will this have a negative impact on receiving an award? So requesting TABA or not has no bearing on the proposal selection process. Again, we're only reviewing TABA requests after selections are made. So you just need to ensure that if you are requesting TABA, just follow the directions in the solicitation and provide the information that we would like to have you provide. One of the things that you do need to understand, however, is that the commercialization and business plan, which is not TABA, it's a different part of the proposal, that you could use TABA to help you strengthen that and get it ready for that phase two submission. Can I use TABA funds within my own company? Currently, the statute requires that any TABA funding must go to a third-party service provider, and funding cannot be used internally by the award recipient. So you'll have to find vendors outside of your firm to actually provide these services to you, and then you will pay them for those services, and then you'll get reimbursed by NASA after those services have been rendered. And we have all those instructions found within the solicitation as well. Can NASA reject a TABA request? Absolutely. these are taxpayer dollars, and so that is the reason why we're going to conduct a formal review of all TABA requests after a selection is made to identify if the vendors you're planning to use are in fact qualified U.S. small businesses, and that they have the ability to provide the services that you're asking for. If there's any evidence of waste, fraud, and abuse, and or vendors that just honestly don't have the qualifications to provide these services, then NASA does reserve the right to refuse providing TABA to those vendors, or providing funding to those for those services to be provided by those vendors. Question 6, I submitted a proposal that was selected for funding but did not request TABA. Can I request TABA after being notified of an award? No, due to budget constraints, NASA has to know as early as possible which small businesses are requesting TABA. All TABA requests will be part of the proposals for both phase 1 and phase 2. So we're going to definitely have to understand that so that we can ensure that we've set aside enough funding to cover the TABA requests that are coming in under that particular set of proposals. Question 7, I received an award at phase 1 but did not request to use TABA and did not receive TABA. Can I ask for it at phase 2? Yes, you can request TABA at phase 2 even if you didn't request it at phase 1. No issue there. The only thing you need to understand is that you'll be required to provide a TABA needs assessment at phase 2 and the supporting document that comes with with the proposal in order to do that. That's perfectly fine. You may feel like you have this type of thing figured out internally within your firm, and you want to provide that TABA needs assessment. You can definitely do that. Not an issue. We'll still review it, and we'll make a determination as to whether or not the vendors you've selected at phase 2 to provide those third-party services for TABA are going to be able to meet the requirements that you outlined in your TABA needs assessment. Further, not using TABA at phase 1, it does not negatively impact the decision to approve TABA at phase 2. So the review processes are completely separate. We're not looking back to see, oh, did they receive TABA at phase 1? No, we're not doing that. We're only going to be reviewing proposals, the technical merit, and the commercialization business plans. Once those move through the review process, and a selection is made, then we'll start looking at TABA for phase 2, and we'll start to identify what the vendors look like and whether or not those vendors are qualified to provide those services at phase 2. Question 8, what happens if I need to change or remove a vendor or make changes to the TABA activities after being approved for TABA? So if you need to make changes to TABA, you should consider them the same process as if you had a subcontractor, in the sense that any changes to any contract, you would contact the contracting officer and make a request for a change. It will be up to the contracting officer to make that final determination as to whether or not you're allowed to change a TABA vendor. Does my business have to request exactly 6,500 at phase 1 or exactly 50,000 at phase 2? No, requests for TABA may be for any amount. You just cannot exceed the defined limits of the statute. So, phase 2, you may say, oh, I only need like $32,000 to conduct, the work, the TABA work that we need. Or you may say you need exactly 50K. It's up to you on how you do that. Just so you know, any funding that is left over, most likely at the end of a contract for TABA, because you will be reimbursed for services, so we don't give you the money upfront as one lump sum. We'll reimburse you for any services conducted, and if there are funds that are left over, those will be returned back to NASA, and or they'll stay with NASA, and ultimately we'll use them for other purposes. Is there a list of qualified TABA vendors? Where can I go to find one? Unfortunately, NASA does not have a preferred vendors list, and I don't think any other agencies as well have a federally approved list of TABA vendors. What you can do, though, is there's a couple things you can do. You can take a look and see on SBIR.gov, they have a very nice resources page which has an entrepreneurial ecosystem, and there are there are organizations there that are listed that could potentially be TABA vendors. The other thing you can also look at is what some of the other federal agencies, who they're contracting with, and potentially look into who those vendors are and see if they would be willing to work with you individually, since NASA doesn't have them on contract. So with that, that is the end of this presentation, and I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to send those to the IOC staff, and or you can also send questions to the SBIR help desk, NASA SBIR help desk. So thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.